Welcome everyone to Office Hours episode 16. I'm your host, Davis Hunt, editor-in-chief of the Pamphleteer. We got a good show for you today. As normal, we're going to go through the past week of the Pamphleteer. And after we do that, I'm going to talk to Jessica Solce about her documentary, Death Athletic, which I wrote a review on, I think last week, 2 weeks ago. I think it was 2 weeks ago, last week, for I Am 1776. If you're unfamiliar with the Pamphleteer, that was the URL. Pamphleteer.co. We are an alt daily. We inherit in spirit from the alt weekly. In Nashville, the alt weekly is the Nashville scene. You see them in all your coffee shops. They're basically no different than toilet paper at this point. But nonetheless, they carry on and they serve the purpose of they've got event calendars. They don't break news. They do kind of more editorial content, that kind of thing. We strive to emulate that model, more focused on culture and the arts in addition to politics, and trying to blend all those three together. If you live in Nashville, it'll be relevant to you. If not, if you want to know what's going on in Nashville, there's probably not a better source. Even despite whatever political affiliation you might have, we put together, in my opinion, the best newsletter aggregating all the news. I mean, if you read the newsletter every day, in the Nashville section that we have, you'll know exactly what's going on in Nashville. So that's kind of the goal, irrespective of my particular views. So if you're not on that list, go to pamphleteer.co to sign up, and you can follow us along there. When I do the rundown, it's basically kind of a sample of what we cover in the daily newsletter. So if you like this next segment, you'll kind of get a sample of what we do daily and kind of, our attitude, that kind of thing. So this past week of the Pamphleteer, I'm starting to realize I've kind of been like a minimalist, and then I've not wanted to do transition music and introduction music and that kind of thing. But I'm starting to realize that I might need to up the production value of this thing a little bit. Like just a little song, just a little ditty to transition us to this next slide. It would be something like, the Cramps, the song Human Fly. I was listening to that earlier. I was thinking, man, that would be a cool intro. I can't license that thing, but if I can find someone if you can play the guitar and you want to spit out a riff for me that sounds like that, let me know. Anyway, the Nashville Cats, the arena football team, are returning to Nashville. They return. Their first game is April 27th, 2024. I grew up going to Nashville Cats game at what is now Bridgestone Arena before the Titans. This is like 96, 97. Always a lot of fun. Arena football is kind of a wild game. It's fun to go to the games. I haven't been to one in probably 25 years, but odds are I will probably wander down to the Municipal Auditorium and go to a Nashville Cats arena football game. So that, again, April 27th, 2024, arena football returns to Nashville. This is a new restaurant in 12 South called the Henry. It's from this group called Fox Restaurant Concepts. They got other restaurants in town. Doughbird, which takes the place of the old CPK in Green Hills. You may be familiar with that. Pushing Daisies in Blanco downtown on Broadway, and that new 12 South, or the what's it called, 12th and Broad, or I don't know, that new super commercial development. Actually, though, if I'm going to see a concert at the Ryman, I usually go eat at Blanco, and then I go get a drink at Pushing Daisies. Both very vibey spots. And if I'm not going to Robert's Western World after the Ryman, those are the only like 3 spots I frequent downtown Nashville right now. So the Henry is supposed to be this kind of like breakfast, lunch, dinner spot. In the article where they announced that it was coming to this section of 12 South, which if you've driven down 12 South recently and you see this development that I'm showing a picture of right now, it's totally unrecognizable. I feel like it hadn't been too long. I'd been down 12 South maybe a month ago, and I drove down it 2-3 weeks ago, and I noticed this brand new, just hype, super luxe development that they're doing where the Henry is going to go. And it shocked me. I didn't realize how fast they're developing that place. The guy, he sells it as it's a chain. It's got 5 existing locations: Arizona, Texas, probably California. I don't know. I can't remember what the other one is. Maybe New York. he sells it as this kind of like neighborhood spot. The problem is there was a sweet spot where 12 South was gentrified enough to not be dangerous and low key enough to where you could go hang out down there and go to mafiosos and 12 South Tap Room and actually see people that kind of lived in the area. In the past 5 years, especially the past 3 years, this area I wouldn't qualify it as a neighborhood anymore. It kind of reminds me of Beverly Hills a bit, or I don't. What's that street in LA where all the shops are? I don't know. What viewer? It's a commercial district. It's a shopping district. I used to call it the runway of Nashville because as it was growing, I would be so bewildered driving down. I was like, what is there to do here? You walk down the street. There's like 3 shops. There's 2 bars. There's nothing to do here. There's a nice park, I will give you that, but no one's hanging out in the park. They like go to the park, take a lap, come back up, go to the top of, I guess they go get ice cream at Jenny's. I don't know. Speaking of the end, so this is the new 12 South. The old 12 South is this great restaurant down on the north end of 12 South towards downtown called Josephine. And they've been there for about 10 years. They opened right when Nashville was getting a lot of hype in 2013. And I remember it distinctly because it was kind of one of the first, I don't know, good restaurants on the west side of town that I was really into. My family we used to go there for, I don't know, when everyone was in town, we'd go eat there. And it's closing after 10 years. And so, between these two, the Henry comes in, this commercial joint that has locations in other areas and kind of has this more slick consumer feel to it, is subbing out for this nice, homey, actual neighborhood joint, Josephine. It is what it is. Across the street from Josephine, of course, is that abomination called Locust, which, if you haven't read H.D. Miller's review of Locust, you should definitely check that out. It's high class. I mean, we're in Nashville. But H.D. Miller's review of Locust is kind of I think a statement on pink sludge culture, as he kind of puts it. It's like reducing everything to these properties that you can reproduce anywhere, regardless of place. There's no connection to the particular area. They're just kind of plopped down there. It's pure maximizing consumer, just sucking up dollars. That's the only thing that they're trying to do. Josephine may have been that, but at least it was like a one-of-a-kind place and run by a local James Beard-nominated chef and this kind of thing. Anyway, I'm really going to miss this place. I used to love going there. They have a great Cornish game hen. Yeah. R.I.P. Josephine. This is next up. This is, so obviously I like to go through all these developments and kind of interesting little things developing in town. This is kind of part of that segment of the show. I should have prefaced this, but Pie Town is an interesting neighborhood. If you're not familiar with it, it's that pie. It's the pie that goes off of the circle with the sticks by the Music City Center and between where Mercy Lounge and Cannery Row used to be down 8th. And it's a very small slice, but there is a ton of development going on right there. You've got 6 projects right here on this slide that you can see. This one in particular is a luxury condo unit, and they're including commercial space in it. I really think that this part of town is going to be one of those more interesting, urban developments that we'll see. I mean, it used to be, the Gulch used to be almost exactly like this part of town is. This is where Third Man Records is. What else is over there? The Greyhound station, which, I mean, come on. I think the Greyhound station is right there by number 6 on the map, if you can see that. It's just above that little sliver. Anyway, you can't see my mouse on the screen. But suffice it to say, this part of town has always been kind of grimy. It's getting a glow up big time. It'll be just totally alien to anyone that's familiar with that part of town. So, it'll be interesting. We'll see what happens. Next thing, housing market in Nashville. Things are not going well. There were 2,697 closings last month, and that's a 5% decrease from last year at this point. I'm not a financial analyst or a real estate guy, but it seems pretty obvious that rising interest rates are probably playing a role in this. And as we discuss here pretty frequently, Davidson County, where Nashville is, has stagnated in its growth as surrounding counties have continued to grow at a more aggressive pace, I guess would be the way to put it. And so, it's not necessarily surprising that housing closings are going down. I think that the era of the single family home in Nashville is no longer going to be that of the everyman or the middle class. It's quickly becoming this kind of it's unattainable to most. Just to be candid, I bought my house in 2018 for $280,000. At the time, it was the only house in West Nashville under $300,000. And now I could probably sell it for $440,000, $450,000. And I've had it for 5 years. And so everyone has experienced this. It's fairly ridiculous and unsurprising that less people are buying homes. I'm sure that if you're a transplant to the city, you're going to live in an apartment vacancies in the city. I think we've got 12,000 vacant apartments in the city right now. So there's a lot of, what do they call it? Lease up or something like that, where they offer perks to you in order to get you signed into a lease, like the first couple of months rent's free or something like that. So housing situations in Nashville is interesting. I don't like talking about it because I think emphasizing affordability of housing makes you sound like a communist, but that's just my opinion on that. 2 weeks from, well, actually a week from today, Joe Allen, author of the book Aeon Flux, is going to be talking at the West Nashville Phoenix Lodge in Sylvan Park about AI and the war on humanity. You can get 10% off your ticket if you use code Pamphleteer, all caps. I think we've got a little Chiron thing. Geneva, can we pull up a little thing just to show the good folks that are watching that they can get a discount? 10% off, code Pamphleteer, all caps. It'll be interesting. I'm not super familiar with Joe's work, but he's been on James Poulas's podcast before. He's been on Steve Bannon. He's been on a number of forbidden personalities talking about kind of the existential threat of AI. And I'm going to be there. It's actually going to be happening at the time of this show, so I haven't really figured out how I might cancel the show. I haven't really, or pre-record it. It's unclear right now, to be honest with you. But yeah, so this is a week. If you're in Nashville, be sure to check that out if that interests you. All right, those are the quick beats. This next section is kind of the stuff that we talk about at the top of the newsletter. I usually write an opener anywhere from 500 to 800 words, just kind of trying to give an impression of what is going on and what people are feeling about certain things. Oh, I'm not done with the slideshow. So first up this is a bunch of tourists, obviously. And one thing that stuck out to me recently was Deanna Ivy's comments at the Nashville Business Breakfast. And Ivy is the new CEO and president of the Nashville Convention and Visitors Corporation, which is largely responsible for promoting and attracting tourists and dealing with various issues around tourism in the city. And in a lot of ways, the office kind of sits in opposition to the mayor, whereas the mayor is purportedly supposed to be concerned with residents' issues. The CVC president and CEO is concerned exclusively with revenue that comes from tourism. And she was quick to, in her speech, commonly, Freddie O'Connell, the current mayor, ran a whole campaign about how he wants you to stay. It's the billionaires and bachelorettes versus us. And the bachelorettes are, of course, kind of the stand-in for tourists, and the billionaires, I guess, are it was really unclear what he meant by billionaires, to be honest. I think it was just kind of like a lefty, eat the rich type thing. But in any event, she says in her speech, and kind of undermines it a little later, but she says of her and O'Connell, we don't disagree. We want the same things. We don't like the chaos. We don't like the term Nash Vegas. Interesting. She says she doesn't like the term Nash Vegas. She then goes on to talk about how the CVC's goal now is to draw more upscale and international tourists, focusing in particular on Germany, France, and Australia. She then echoes O'Connell's kind of monomaniacal obsession with mass transit, saying that the missing piece of the puzzle in attracting tourists of this caliber, the upscale international tourists, the aristocrats, ideally, I think, is mass transit. Here's what she says. It does a couple of things for us, speaking of mass transit. Our hospitality's employees are generally in the suburbs and out in the county, so it makes it easier for them to get to work, not the long commute, not the gas parking fees, Ivy said, but also our international travelers. They are looking for it. They are used to public transportation, and I think that says it all. In November 2024, this is the talk of the town, and anyone that monitors this stuff will tell you, Freddie O'Connell is going to roll out a transit referendum, and the scope of which, unclear, but coming in 2024, we're to expect a referendum on mass transit in the city. And something to look out for is how the CVC plays into that and what demands they get met, what demands they require in order to get behind a transit plan. To be honest with you, I've lived in cities with transit that were functional. San Francisco has a functional transit system that you can use and get around town. I've been to New York. I haven't lived there, but I did rely on public transit. I didn't have a car when I lived in San Francisco. When I lived in Los Angeles, of course, I originally did not have a car, but eventually I got a car because the city is sprawling and transit there is just kind of a nightmare to navigate. San Francisco and the Bay Area is more manageable. But Nashville, it's kind of like LA, but it's even worse than LA. We don't even have a grid that extends as far as LA's does. We've got this spoke and wheel set up. And so, for me personally, I don't think there's any service you could offer me that would get me, unless it was a helicopter from my house to where I'm working, that would get me to utilize public transit in this city. It's the second most car reliant city in the country. And however, I may be inclined to support a transit plan that puts all the tourists on buses and trains and whatever, shuttles them from the airport to their hotel downtown, and keeps the tourists off the street, and have them in this little Wally, like in this little Wally utopia where they never have to touch the street and they're carted around like cattle. I'd be fine with that. I would be more likely to support a transit plan that promised me that it would get tourists off the road than I would to be one that would offer to appeal to me. And I think that most people that live, I don't know. I think most people that live in the city, the last time they tried to do this referendum was under Megan Barry and it was defeated 2-1. And people blame the failure on her affair and that kind of thing. I think it's genuinely because people just do not use transit in the city, and there's a very limited vocabulary for navigating the city via transit. And I'm not alone on that. Despite what the loud voices in city government want you to think, no one in this town rides the bus. Why would you? They can't even, as we'll learn in this next segment, they can't even keep the city. They can't even protect college students from getting shot. So what makes you think that I'm going to trust that they can operate a bus safely? So in any event, public transit referendum, if they try to sell it as like this perk for tourists, honestly, I may support that. Get them off the road. Shuttle them from the airport downtown, put them on buses, let them do whatever they want. Keep them out of people that live in the city's hair. I think that's a good way to do it. Start building those walkways like in Vegas that go over the street. I've driven down Vegas during, a fairly busy time of the year, and there's thousands of tourists walking on walkways above you that are not interfering with your commute, even though there are a lot of cars down there. Anyway, that's all I got to say about that transit. This next one, so I'm sure most of you saw earlier this week, Steven Crowder leaked like 3 pages from Audrey Hale's manifesto. And my original stance on this whole thing had been that I've found that the obsession with releasing the manifesto and demanding its release to be a distraction and something. It kind of reminds me of dogs begging their owner for a treat. There's no leverage that you have when you're begging these people to have these things released. And I felt it a huge distraction. I thought the better question was whether or not she was on hormone replacement therapy. And I stuck to that argument until Tuesday, when after the leak was made, Freddie O'Connell immediately, and the MNPD and everyone immediately set about trying to demonize the person that leaked the documents. That was kind of a reset for me, and I realized, I'm going to have to pick a side here. I'm going to have to choose to support the people that are trying to hide the document, and ultimately sowing distrust, more and more distrust between residents and the city government than there already is. So I kind of backtracked on this stance that I've had since April, and said begrudgingly, I don't see any way to resolve this issue without a full release. That said, I don't think that a full release, whatever that means, is going to satisfy anyone. I mean, by delaying this release, they set up this horrible precedent where whatever they put out, no one is going to trust. They're going to redact it, thus beginning a whole new cycle of salivating over its full release. It'll never end. You can never know enough about the motives here to satisfy you. I mean, they're still making movies about Jeffrey Dahmer and Ted Bundy, puzzling over their motives and this kind of thing. It was a mistake to even delay its release, unlike all other, the particular circumstances and what actually comprises the manifesto aside. It's been a massive PR failure for the Metro Police Department, the TBI, and city government. And so, Freddie O'Connell's first reaction was to, I satirized it. Well, actually, so Phil Williams, famous investigative journalist around here, if you're not familiar, I satirized his reaction to it, which was to say, in the manifesto, Audrey Hale talks about crackers and people with mop blonde hair driving daddy's Mustangs real fast, wearing khakis. First of all, that's me. I'm the mop blonde hair. I went to church at Covenant. I also went to the school that she was purportedly also going to target. We don't know that yet, so that's not on the record by any means. I'm just talking. But, she's the stereotype that she formed in that little page is quite literally the stereotype that me and my family and many of my friends and people that attended that church fit. So I personally, I guess I could get upset about it. It's not new to me. I've faced much more racial, discrimination in that regard when I lived in Los Angeles. Anyway, I'm getting off track. So Phil Williams came out and said that the rest of the document revealed that she hated everyone, not just particularly white people. So I wrote, after gaining exclusive access to the Covenant shooter's writing, Phil Williams reveals, that's like his famous tagline for all his investigative reports, Phil Williams reveals that Audrey Hale would have been satisfied with victims regardless of their age, gender, race, ethnicity, religion, disability, sexual orientation, sexual identity, education, national origin, or any other distinguishing characteristic or trait. Don't worry. She was not targeting anyone in particular. She would have been satisfied with any dead person. It's just an insane statement to make. In all prior times, if someone went and shot up a church, it would be understood as an attack on that church. It's only in this modern, evidence-driven, secular environment that you have to get evidence. Did she actually mean to shoot up the church, or was she just going to be happy shooting anyone? Why? She didn't go to the church because there was Christians there. It's I don't understand the mindset that you'd have to inhabit to kind of take a stance against that and be like, no, she didn't hate Christians, even though she killed 6 of them. Freddie O'Connell's reaction was equally, just meh. He announced that he was going to form a task force to go and find the person that leaked these documents and persecute them. He said that he was going to involve local, state, and federal authorities in order to track this person down and hold them accountable for leaking the documents against the wishes of the covenant parents who have been given ownership of the manifesto, or the manifesto by Audrey Hill's family. Don't worry, this is me satirizing. I'm just reading from what I write. Sorry, you gotta bear with me here. Don't worry, we'll get the guy who made it seem like y'all were the intended target, he announces as he initiates his far-reaching investigation into who leaked the documents. All is well in the Nashville community. The killer didn't mean to kill anyone specific. Now we can finally talk about gun control laws. That's what this whole reaction to the manifesto has been particularly underscored in the past couple of days, as news broke this morning about an 18-year-old Belmont student who was shot walking in a park nearby the campus. And the same day that this news broke and we became aware of the person that did it, who, no surprise, should have been in jail, was I'm going to read the exact language because I got it here. He was charged with aggravated assault. This is the guy that shot the 18-year-old Belmont student. He was charged with aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, but they were dropped because he was deemed incompetent to stand trial and not insane enough for involuntary commitment. So they just let him back out in the street. This was May 19th. In September, he committed more crimes. That was the same process repeated itself. And here we are, he's out Tuesday and shoots an 18-year-old Belmont student on the same day that this story breaks, which indicates a vast, to most people with a little bit of sense who believe that you should punish criminals, this exposes this very gaping hole in the way that we address crime. On the same day that this happens, we learn that 7 Nashville police officers have been placed on administrative assignment in order to ferret out who leaked the COVID documents. So think about what kind of message this sends to the city. You have an 18-year-old college student, an 18-year-old girl who's killed, and the Metro Police Department is on the same day more concerned with determining who released these documents that reveal the motive of one of the more horrific events to happen in this city. Easily, yeah. I don't know. As long as I've been alive, it's the most horrific thing to happen, and the most horrific thing to happen in the city as long as I've been alive. They chose to focus time on smothering whoever revealed those documents instead of, saying that they were going to launch a strong response to this. And Freddie O'Connell's public statement in reaction to the event was even worse. He, of course, said he felt for the family of the girl and this and that, but he ultimately ended it with this sentence, these 2 paragraphs, sorry. Doctors have previously deemed the suspected shooter to be incompetent to stand trial. Unfortunately, our criminal legal system and limited mental health access left a dangerous individual both untreated and legally armed. I would say that a little differently. I would say it left a dangerous individual in public. He should have been in jail. Freddie O'Connell clearly does not have the courage to call out what the actual problem is, which is this person should not have been on the street in the first place. They want to focus on how he got a gun, and a lot of people have been technically focusing on the fact that he was legally allowed to have a gun, which is kind of irrelevant. Tennessee needs more beds for individuals experiencing mental health crises and a renewed conversation about how we limit access to firearms for individuals we know are a threat to the community. So we need to have a conversation about this, and we need to open up hospital beds or mental health beds for this instead. Anyway, I think you get my point. So that's all I got for this past week of the Pamphleteer. I'm having up Jessica Solce. We recorded this conversation earlier in the day, about 2 this afternoon, and we talk about her documentary Death Athletic, which I cannot recommend enough. If you look in the comments or the show notes for YouTube, I put a link to my review that I wrote in I Am 1776 about the film, which I originally saw in El Salvador back in August. And Jessica is, had taken on a worthy, a momentous task here. Spent 8 years filming Cody Wilson. I call him the evangelist of the 3D printed gun. I think that accurately describes him. He kind of gave the 3D printed gun a political vocabulary and made it into this First and Second Amendment a cause, and it was a very interesting movie. I was not familiar with Cody Wilson prior to, so I hope you enjoyed that conversation, and I'll be back at the tail end to tell you goodbye. So enjoy. All right, welcome back. I'm here with Jessica Solce, director, filmmaker, producer, etc. of Death Athletic, which I wrote a review on in I Am 1776. I should probably pull that up. Maybe we'll do that at some point. I first saw Jessica's film probably, that was back in August, and was pretty blown away by it. I think it does a great job. In addition to profiling the character of Cody Wilson, it kind of does a good job of showing people that aren't familiar with American gun culture, just how kind of fanatical it can get. And when I first saw it, I was sitting next to someone from Budapest, and was trying to explain to him about how we treated guns and how I got a shotgun when I was 10 for Christmas and this and that. And it's kind of a rite of passage to get a gun. So anyway, I'm going to bring Jessica up, and we'll talk more particularly about her film. Hey, Jessica.
Hey.
How are you?
I'm very good. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, so you've been, when I saw this in August, you were there. And since then, the film has been released, and you've been doing something of a promotional tour for it, right? So
Yes.
so tell us where you've been and how you've been kind of promoting the movie and this and that.
Well, you saw it in kind of like a special screening in El Salvador, which was a lot of fun.
Right.
Then it premiered in New York in October, and then Austin, and then it was released online. But it continues. There was just a conference in Lisbon for Urbit, and it's screened there. This is a film that needs more of a surge from the ground to get it known.
Yeah.
Out there. This is not a mainstream film. Even though we tried to make it a mainstream film, it doesn't, in the sense that we tried to sell it and do everything like that. No one would have it. But who knows? Things could always change.
Any screenings or anything coming up?
There might be one in Houston. We're looking to go back in New York probably in January. One in Buffalo. Someone's trying to set it up in Sweden. There's things that are populating as time goes on, and if anyone's interested, best to just follow me on Twitter or subscribe. Because as they come into existence, I will be tweeting about them and telling everyone. So so it was released at deathathletic.com, where everyone can kind of access the film, buy directly from the filmmaker, even with Bitcoin and Monero, etc. Or it's on like Google and Apple and iTunes, because that gives it legitimacy. But still getting the film out there, getting wave.
Well, so I kind of started this off at a weird spot, asking about your screening, and you just talking about it being an underground film. And for people that are watching this and not familiar, the film's about Cody Wilson, who was kind of I think of him as kind of an evangelist of 3D printed guns. Would you say that that's like an accurate description?
Well, he is the creator of the theatrical set that put 3D guns in the mental market that we have today, if you will.
Yeah.
In 2013, there were people that were kind of playing, like very few, like a handful of people that were like actually playing with creating 3D guns and plastic pieces. But what Cody brought to it is that he put it out into the mainstream without being threatened by the possibility of him becoming like this evil person.
Right.
So he daftly put it out there and created a kind of mainstream event. I mean, everybody was writing about it. Every single paper
Yeah.
couldn't get enough. This was at a time where it was still sold papers and it was still cool to report on quote unquote evil, right?
Yeah.
So he's, for lack of like better words, he kind of like godfathered in the movement. Because with it, he took something that was definitely going to be in like the hobbyist realm, perhaps, that was going to be relegated to like more, forum chats and such. And he pushed it out there in a way that like it suddenly had to be politically dealt with.
Right.
So he generated a movement that also had kind of like he never wrote like a manifesto or anything, but there was a promise behind it for decentralization and open source, and also, the power play of technology against politics. So that all started in 2013. And then year after year, people joined, got more active. And then by 2018 and 2019, that's when something really shifted in the, I guess, marketplace of 3D printing, and many, many other groups formed. And we can talk about that and why and what kind of like pushed that out there. But then it changed.
The documentary starts tracking him in 2013 and it goes up to, I believe, 2021. So it's like it's an 8-year span that you're tracking Cody Wilson through his various trials and travails. Yeah, explain how you got introduced to Cody. I know it's based on a previous documentary that you'd done, and kind of what made you think it was like worthy of devoting a lot of your time to? Because spending 8 years on a project, I mean, you have to be pretty convinced of what you're doing, right? And,
a little insane.
Well, we've all done. I think we all in this sphere do insane things like that.
So yeah, in 2013, I'd been in the film world, but I didn't think I was going to be making documentaries. So I kind of fell into making my first doc in 2013. It's called No Control. It was really asking the efficacy of gun controls. This is post Sandy Hook. And I really wanted to see something that was against this mainstream idea that we were constantly seeing. It was literally just anytime you turned on the TV, anything, it was kids running out of buildings. That was the beginning and the end of it. It was very like that level of fear mongering was really effective, and also affected me differently at that time in my life. And I deeply did not appreciate it.
Right.
So I ran into this artist that I'd seen multiple times. He told me about a piece he was doing. I thought it was going to be a very interesting and visual way into kind of like the anti-gun sentiment or the control sentiment. And I decided within 5 days to film him. The first day I was filming him on camera, he actually tells me about Cody. And immediately, while we were filming, I was like, okay, he's the other side of this documentary. This documentary is going to be a feature. I guess I'm making a documentary. So Cody was in my first film, but there's a lot of other people in it. It was talked to a lot of people within the United States, and it's really about the efficacy of guns. That came out and was purchased in 2015. And there was so many times in between 2013 and 2015 when I was filming that I was just falling into what Cody was doing in his story. So when 2015 came around, I just was like, I need to just continue following you. I just want to make this a long piece. I didn't know what that really meant, but again, it had the same kind of motivation as my first film. Everything that was coming out about 3D printing, everything that was coming out about Cody and Defense Distributed. It was short, it was biased. It already had this like evil underneath it.
Yeah.
And I wanted to actually see what would happen. Obviously, he's extremely eloquent and intelligent, and he's very
quotable.
like highly quotable.
So he's also on film. He's a fantastic character.
Yeah, correct. Yes.
And he obviously, there was so many lawsuits that were happening. There were so many things coming down the pipeline. I just wanted to continue. So in 2015, he agreed, and I started filming again. So this film, Death Athletic, started in 2015, and the very, very, very last time I shot was in January of 2022. And that ended up being, there's a lot of film on the floor for this film.
Yeah.
He was filming for so many years, but
right, I bet
that piece of footage just ended up being part of that kind of like beautiful montage near the end.
How do you even, I mean, there's so many, ways to, because Cody's interesting. This whole, what you're saying about kind of narrative correction is, that's what a lot of what I do as well is, and that's kind of what motivated this project was, on a local level, witnessing narratives get spread. There not being any counter to it. And I can relate to that impulse when you see something being so one-sided, the information about it being so one-sided and mostly dumb and like unsophisticated.
Sure.
You get curious and you want to like push back against it. So I get that. Anyway, that's a long way to say you left a lot of footage on the cutting room floor. How do you even start editing something like this?
I mean,
like, is it piecemeal over the years? Like you edit, how do you even approach that?
I would film something, I would transcribe it, I would start grabbing bits and pieces, the things that hit me the hardest. So like at one point, right before I found my editor, or even when I finally found the editor I was going to work with, I had about a 7-hour cut. Obviously, I couldn't turn that over. So from there, I was like, I just started grabbing and cutting and trying to figure out what was actually necessary. You still have to make a film that has enough information without putting people to sleep, if you will.
Of course.
And compelling. So you can't put everything, and there's so much that was left on the floor. But so by the time I started working with my editor, we had a cut that I think was a little under 3 hours. And then we would just take it section by section. I mean,
and just whittle it down.
Good thing about this film, in the sense of narrative, it is starting in, well, we go back a little bit to 2030, because you have to catch people up if they don't know the story. Of course, you can't just jump right into it. So it harkens back to like 2013 and things that were happening. But then the film starts in 2015. So the arc, it does follow a timeline. So it does help with, building what kind of ideas need to be established in the beginning to carry you through to the end. So, the timeline of it is helpful edit-wise. But it took a lot. And I was very, very thankful to find the editor that I had, because I went through a bunch that just was like, but what about unbiased opinions? Aren't you gonna like film like politicians talking about this? And I'd
capturing the other side.
I'd be like, no. And then I'm like, I can't, this is not going to go anywhere. So I gratefully found a person who totally understood what I was making.
Yeah.
Completely got it. And it was awesome.
So, I mean, like, I guess like kind of the narrative arc, theoretically, you have that baked in your head because you've seen him go through, his various court appointments, his legal dust up, his return to Defense Distributed after that, and like all this stuff. So you kind of like, I guess in your head, you have an idea of what the story is.
For
but
sure.
You kind of like you find that again in the 7-hour supercut.
I mean, if you want to know, I wrote an entire script. So
really?
Yeah, I script. I mean, not like pre-script. Like I scripted it out. I started that in like 2018 was the first time I started scripting it. Because there were so many themes that I needed to make sure I got in. So it was just, and there was so much footage and I had like a 5-hour, 7-hour, I don't know, cut in 2018, 2019. So it was just trying to really understand how things could overlap and what needed to be montage wise. And all the politicians that needed to be interspersed. So yeah, I have an entire script. I haven't looked at it for a long time. And by the time we made it, I don't think I ever really referenced it, but it definitely helped me mentally build what needed to happen. Pretty sure.
I also like the I mean the score is great too. The score is interesting, and like some of the like the blown up deconstructed 3D blueprints and all that stuff is like very cool.
Yeah.
Like what was how did you think about scoring the movie? I assume you had a composer who you worked with.
Oh, not at all.
Oh, really?
This is like super indie. Also, I reached out to a lot of musicians along while making this film for both the film and the trailer, and we just constantly got no's. They would not be involved in a film about guns. There was like no way around it. There was not money wouldn't even be brought up before the no would be handed out. Just no after no after no. It was very, very evident from the very beginning that like Free Music Archive was going to be the way that we scored an entire freaking film. And one thing that, I mean, my editor...
Is all the music from Free Music Archive?
Basically.
Are you serious?
So yeah, so something that my editor, her softball that she threw at me, and which I learned a lot during this, because my first film I had composed. I had the beats, we kind of built in beats in the edit and then composed on top of it.
Yeah.
For this film, she's like, we're going to edit this to music from the beginning. Like, we couldn't even start until he had some music.
Yeah.
We were ready. Like, that was the terms. And at the beginning, it was just like, well, shit, because, oh, sorry, I don't know if I can curse on your thing.
It's all right.
It was
we can cuss.
One after the other of like, no, you can't use this. Like, no. So we spent, I want to say hundreds. I think probably together, we probably spent hundreds of hours listening to music on Free Music Archive.
Wow.
63 songs in the piece. It does kind of feel like a music video in the sense. And I think actually the music is like its own character in this film. And I don't think there was any other way to do it. So everything, almost everything was found on Free Music Archive. Also, things on Free Music Archive, sometimes I couldn't get the permissions because guns. And some of the people there aren't necessarily free, but they gave me great pricing. And they were the ones that like understood or weren't scared about what I was making. They were all in, and some of them got some beautiful music. But even for the trailer, it took us 3 weeks to find a song because I just kept on getting no's. So
yeah, that's wild that you pieced that together. I would have never guessed that, because the music really, I mean, it blends well with the whole documentary. It's like it doesn't stand out too much. I can think the song at the beginning, or the track at the beginning, is fairly distinctive.
The classical and then the title track, which is like a whale alarm. I love
it. That's distinctive. And then I can think of like another point, maybe during the courtroom scene when Cody has to step down and I can't remember her name. That woman, is giving a press conference.
Paloma.
Or some track. Yeah, Paloma. There was some track there, but I don't know. It's it's interesting because I would have never guessed that. The music blends in very well. I think that's the ideal. I heard Steven Soderbergh say that when he thinks about the soundtrack for his movies, it's about what's going on in the character's head. And I think if you pursue that down to its logical end, it's basically music that's so married to what's going on that you don't even notice it.
Sure. So. I think there's probably a mix. There's definitely some musical choices and like moments where we're just pumping the moments.
Yeah.
There's like it hits, but it's. I feel like every time I watch it, and especially in a theater, when I finally got to watch it in theater, I was like, oh, this is so nice.
Yeah.
I actually.
So I mean, did you? I hate to ask all these technical film questions, but I'm because we'll get to the more about Cody's personality and this and that and the public reception. But I want to get this out of the way. did you mix the sound yourself and all that stuff? Was that all like, because is it only a track? It's like the voice tracks and then the music. Is there anything else going on? Like, is there sound effects?
There's only a few times where we put in like a car door closing or a few. I mean, I would be surprised if there's more than 20 sound effects in the whole film.
Okay.
Maybe over 10. There's not much sound effect happening. Like keyboard, car door shutting. Yeah, very few.
Okay.
All the music really acts as a partner to what's happening.
Yeah.
Since there is so much music, and we use the music, and I mean, we just found pieces that were just like the moments where you are editing and you're working and you're searching for music so voraciously, and you suddenly lay something down, and we would just go berserk when it would already hit the cut.
Yeah.
I mean, those magical moments were happening so many times that it was just like, we would just go nuts. Like, oh my God, we got it. Okay. And then I'd be like, let's see if I can get the rights.
Every time I've made a movie, I feel like it's a miracle that it all comes together. It's like those moments and just kind of, what you capture on camera and like the assembly of people around the whole thing. I mean, it feels like this, it's like a magical thing that you even get this like, cohesive product at the end.
Yeah, like how does this
work? I mean, yeah, just think you spent 8 years digging through Free Music Archives and then assembling footage and then just all.
The Free Music Archive only started in 2022.
Well, I mean, like, that's.
Oh yeah.
I'm just saying that all that comes together in that nice hour and a half. I'm fascinated by the filmmaking process.
Mm-hmm. So there is a single musical track, but you get a song, and then sometimes you can't just play the entire song. You just want the beginning and the end, because you have to have the end, and then sometimes there is a song where you want to hit certain beats in the song that you need to repeat over a certain 20 seconds, because you're doing a montage and you want that sound. So yeah, no song was literally played, I don't think so, from beginning to end. Most of the time there's a lot of little chops in between, and then it, the end of the song gets cut in, and then the scene ends. No, there's a lot of little cuts throughout the whole thing per song.
Cool. All right, well, let's move on. Let's talk more about Cody. One thing that I thought was interesting, and this came up when I was writing the review and some of the conversations I had with people while I was, thinking about how to approach it, because most of at this point, if you, it seems like this 2018 charges have swamped his personality and kind of marred what he was about. Like, even some of the responses I got to the interview were kind of focused on that specifically. In my review of the doc and his, who kind of what he is, I tried to not focus on that, because I think that's, frankly, just not what your movie's about, and less important to the story of what his kind of mission is. But I don't know. I didn't know if you had any thoughts on how that's kind of overshadowed his efforts.
I think it was an awful moment for the movement, and definitely an awful personal moment. That situation, which if anyone wants to learn more, it's in the film. Definitely marred him within the community, especially at the beginning, when and still now. It depends on where you land in the community. It's such a niche thing. The gun, because it's specifically the 3D gun.
Yeah.
There's many people in the gun community that want nothing to do with 3D guns, right?
Right.
It's a community within a community that's still incredibly small and niche in a way.
Yeah.
There's still, I think it caused so much it's like when you have someone that you look up to and you find out that they're flawed.
Yeah, yeah.
It can create so much dissatisfaction and emotion on multiple levels.
Right.
I still think a lot of people don't know the whole story. And I know that there's just a lot of fake stuff that goes around Twitter, like fake tweets that Cody made. That's fake things. People like to accuse a lot of stuff, but throughout all my research, because I've been waiting for other things to pop up because that's what I have to do. I was documenting everything. Nobody ever gave evidence.
Yeah.
People say things. I mean, you can say it about anybody that's on any kind of fame or notoriety, but I was waiting for more evidence if somebody wants to, say the word, let's say it, pedophile or something.
Yeah.
Evidence,
for people that don't know, I mean, I don't want to focus on this, but I think it's important because the most of the negative responses I got to the review, and maybe you've heard this about the film, were like insults to him personally based on these charges. And
Sure.
he met someone on a sugar daddy website. Turns out the girl was lying about her age. Turned out she was 16. He found out, and the mom pressed charges against him, or it was something like that.
She told her counselor, and the counselor has to press charges.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, he was so that obviously tangled up. But I just, it's interesting to me that people want to focus specifically on that instead of just ignoring the objective impact that he had in kind of, promoting 3D guns as an instrument of freedom and this kind of thing. I'm always surprised by that.
I think there's a ton in the community that still laud him for just doing that. It's just It's so niche and so Twitter that if you're going to write something about him, you're going to get literally the same 10 people writing the same things.
All right. Well, good to know. Yeah. My first time stumbling into this, into that ecosystem.
It's fine. And you know what? If anybody in the audience wants to know more information, watch the film. I have the I have the exclusive with the lawyers. Why is Cody not in prison if he did this purposefully? Like, if that's what he was seeking, watch the film. You'll learn a lot. Yeah. And and I hope this young lady is doing beautiful and has a great life and everything. But every single act that we do in this world has the effect possibly on someone else. So, it's a story. Come watch the film.
Yeah, it's not the story. I was surprised by that being, anyway, the emphasis because I deliberately did not make it about that. And I had conversations with people that wanted to make it more about that and like how flawed he was and this kind of thing. And
sure.
To me, that's not the most interesting thing about him is that he exists in this kind of pantheon of cypherpunks like Julian Assange and Aaron Swartz and those guys. And, I think it's interesting his kind of interplay with those characters. And, his mission is more explicitly kind of American and unique to America because it has to do with firearms and it kind of springs from the Second Amendment. What are he's got this like very complex web of political thoughts. Mm-hmm. How would he describe himself? A crypto?
I think he would still call himself
anarchist.
Anarchist, yeah. I think he would still use that as its shorthand. A right-leaning crypto anarchist. I don't know.
Yeah.
But also, I think the surprising thing is because he's in the same kind of pantheon as Assange, Schwartz, and all this stuff. Which Assange was a deep. He was encouraged by everything that Assange was doing at the time.
Right.
He leaks. They wanted to create him and Bendenio, which other characters in this world that have never been on film are in my film. Like Benjamin Denio is the person who actually came up with the idea of the 3D gun. It wasn't. It was Cody, but they were partners in it. But Cody was the one willing to put his face and to push it on mainstream and actually make it happen. He made it happen. But they. So sorry. What was I talking about?
Assange, Benjamin Denio.
But the thing is, this film is like a 2A doc, sure, but it's actually a First Amendment. But it also, and to me, more importantly, in some ways, is a First Amendment doc. Because to this day, people don't, there's so many people, because I get reminded that this is so niche, and I've been so obsessed with everything that's happened in the last 10 years. There's so many people that have never even heard of any of this.
Right.
But when they do, often people think that Defense Distributed and Cody Wilson was like actually literally handing out guns. Like that the fact that they're just giving code online is still new information. When you go back to like cypherpunk ideas of PGP and Bernstein and Zimmerman and fighting ITAR, these are things about information and code and open source information and being able to put things on the internet without somebody telling you that you can't do this, right? Specifically someone meaning the government, right?
Because one of the great early quotes he has is he talks about the idea that a government could believe that it could monitor these flows of information and, you know, and like suss out this one is bad, this one is good, just at like a bit by bit level.
Sure.
is this kind of hallucination of power.
Yeah.
Which you know, that's one of the endlessly quotable lines that he pulls out. But that explains well this like the Second Amendment butting up against the First Amendment. It's like I can't think of a more American cause than fighting for the First Amendment through the Second Amendment.
Sure. I mean, yeah. I mean, it was built on grand mischief and symbolic ideas, and boy, did it take off.
Yeah.
So because it really hit this moment in the United States, because we're having like crypto, Bitcoin, everything where technology is outrunning politics, and technology is forcing new politics to be created, which is super interesting to me.
Yeah.
So that's definitely like a theme underneath the whole film as well, that leads into all these other people that are, I guess, practicing these death athletics on the mainstream.
Explain more what death athletic means and where it comes from.
Sure. So Peter Sloterdijk, in a book called You Must Change Your Life, he talks about death athletes. And it's definitely within a religious framework of people like Jesus, other religious martyrs who, despite their impending death, you know, they got over the tyranny of death, they emancipated themselves, and they confronted it. Back then, literally, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he had this idea called death athlete. And I've spoken about how a lot of when I started this film, because Cody is who he is and how he speaks, I really had to read everything he was reading. So a big part of preparing every time I sat down with him or was with him or Ben or anyone else was to read. And read meaning philosophy. So
like who?
Like Baudrillard was a big one. So Baudrillard, Camus, Sloterdijk, we were all reading in 2015. And then in 2018, right before Cody got in trouble, he wrote Death Athletic on his Twitter page. So like those ideas were still in there, and I had a different title for this film, but when it started actually getting edited, I was just like, that is just such a good title, and it's so purposeful. So I took it, and in for my purpose, it's kind of somewhat modernized. It's no longer in the religious term, but in the same way, it's individuals like Ulbricht and Aaron Schwartz, which it became literal, Assange, Manning, all these individuals who create systems, who despite the possibility of a literal or symbolic imprisoned death, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of, I feel like it's like a beautiful slogan to kind of incorporate, like to become death athletic, to, you know, become the harbingers of quote unquote misinformation, and be willing to, or whatever that is, and be willing to have your cultural or social or familial death, because you have your own moral and ethical compass. You have to not stop. Like, and we see individuals like that, I think, ever more, especially when all these said conspiracy theories or other things start coming true.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's the people that speak out and they won't be silenced, basically.
The thing I like to ask the Bitcoin people, I've been in, on periphery of the Bitcoin scene for a long time, is if they would die for Bitcoin. It's kind of related, but it feels like I don't know what it is about the decentralized computing world that kind of produces these characters. I can't think of another culture or subculture that produces them. I mean, you mentioned obvious religious figures, but in the modern world, it's like these
the tech world. I think the tech in general, or the ability to use internets.
Like John McAfee is another example of a guy. I don't know that he's not really an activist, or I don't know that he's harder to describe. I would not associate him with these guys. But I don't know. It's just interesting that the modern kind of like pirates that are willing to risk it all for these things are emerging basically from the internet or through the internet.
Yeah, I mean, it starts with Napster, Pirate Bay.
Yeah,
and they're all. I think in this term, it's almost like creating beautiful things, meaning beautiful systems on the internet, is more powerful than protesting in the street.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yes.
So that I think that's why the people that have the mental and death wish, the capacity to bridge it via tech is like the strongest way to go.
Yeah. It's interesting. All right. Well, I'm going to pull up your website here to show everyone. Hold on. It's going to take me a second. There we go. Yeah. So you can, as Jessica mentioned, you can buy the film directly from her, which is what I did. Amazon, Google, Apple TV, it's all over the place. Here's the trailer you were talking about. I like the color yellow here.
Thank you. It goes back to the poster. If you hit yeah.
Oh, merch.
If you hit merch, you can see the poster. Yeah, everyone, yellow is such a strong, beautiful color, and it's unsuspected. Like people.
Oh yeah.
Yellow. It's fantastic.
It's so just strange to talk about your favorite color. But my mom grew up, growing up, my mom was obsessed with Van Gogh and she loved yellow, and that's rubbed off on me. I also I think it's a chronically underrated color.
Yeah, it really pops. And it's not as usual. I mean, we've tried this poster on so many different colors, and it's just like, okay, red and black. Everybody's seen it.
Yeah.
Hot pink was pretty cool, though, I must say.
I could see that. I could see that popping.
It was nice.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, what's the public reception? Okay, we discussed early on kind of your challenges finding distribution and this kind of thing. I mean, talk more about kind of your choice to just put it independently. Like, you're not able to rely on a distributor. No one's going to pick it up, right? Have you given up on that?
I mean, if like the only people that's possible that hopefully we'll be having conversations with is like Daily Wire or The Blaze or people that aren't this piece. And the funny thing is, this piece isn't that scary. Like, it's just because of who it is and what it's about. It's not. So in 2018, we tried to sell it. I had a different PR company with me who's amazing, and I still love them. And what we got back from like the mainstreaming, which I thought at that moment where like Cody was basically taking himself down, unfortunately, or like making it like, Achilles heel. He had a spot. He was God. That they would kind of like, oh, well, we can do it now because he's been humiliated or something.
Yeah.
It's, as a filmmaker, it's a horrible thing maybe to say, but that was the time where we were trying to sell it. And still it would be like, no, this film is basically, it's somebody said it's on the wrong side of history, literally. So at that point, I came to the realization that, oh, nobody's going to buy this film. And then we tried to shop it around, but it's just not. But the craziest thing is, even when we showed in New York and the potentiality of like some of the people there, like quote unquote, these are the people that would like watch on Netflix or something like that. They loved it.
Yeah.
I had some people that I've known forever that kind of like were like, Jessica, what are you doing? Throughout the years, I was asked, are you still filming him? Like in like an excited way. And that was the most confusing thing ever. Not confusing, but just the fact like, wait, what?
People want something that's got the veneer of danger. I'm convinced of that. And I think that.
And the only thing they can get now is like, high sexualized Dahmer Netflix series.
Yeah. Oh, they love celebrating Dahmer.
Yeah. But it's just like, okay, but why not learn something about what's really happening? Right now. Shocking. So like I hope it still has the potentials. It's still small. It's still niche. But the film had to come out. I could not wait any longer. We had to push it out into the mainstream, and it's been beautiful. It's been these conferences. The premieres were great. I hope more things come along, but I have yet to get somebody who actually watched the film say anything other than like that was awesome.
Yeah. I mean, it's
or at least that they enjoyed it and they learned something from it, right?
I was not at all aware. I mean, like I guess I'd seen headlines about 3D printed guns and like I hope I don't want to Fed post here, but I built my own AR before.
Mm-hmm.
Out of like a lower 80 and had to mill out the receiver and that kind of thing. But 3D guns and like the culture around it, I'd never spent any time exploring. So like the most interesting part of the film is kind of entering into that world.
Sure.
And the first guy you encounter is Cody Wilson, and he's kind of like your guide through this just crazy subculture. I mean, it's wild what goes on down there. It's some very, I mean, it's exotic in a way, and I bet that's why it's probably compelling for some people. They're like, I had no idea. Yeah.
I mean, and it also goes into like modern day things like the 80%. With Biden's the ATF rule, which now went to Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court was like, basically, we're not gonna, okay, it passes, but we're not gonna say why. They just like drop it. And people are gonna fight it, but your 80% is not allowed any longer right now.
No, I got it. Like, it was bought in anticipation of that.
Yeah, it's just like so the film it's about 3D guns, but there's so many other laws that happen throughout the you get into 80%, you get into 0%, and the ghost gunner things, CNC mills, all the other stuff that has happened within just the gun space as well.
I mean, I don't want to keep you too much longer. I know you probably got stuff to do. But here in Nashville, we had the Covenant. This is just an example of how like talk about gun regulation kind of swamps any productive discourse on anything, because it reduces any incident of violence or crime or whatever to like laws around how to like minutely restrict what kind of guns a person can get. And it's just like this, it's just a stupid process, in my opinion, and I'm sure that if someone disagrees with that, with the Second Amendment, they probably think that I sound stupid, but I don't care.
Well,
in any event,
it all usually comes down to like, now they're getting better at it, but it usually comes down to like little laws that affect little tiny things. That used to be the approach in the past. So I mean, they're basically like I remember in 2014. I think it was Cody or Ben or someone was like, we would take them more seriously if they just said guns gone.
Yeah. I know. Like it's like they don't want to say that because they know that's unpopular.
But then
obviously.
Cut to like person like Beto, who was basically actually kind of like on that train. Like he was willing to take that step.
God, that guy.
Yeah, it's guns in the United States will be tricky forever, but they definitely aren't going anywhere.
There was there was the Covenant, school shooting here back in March. And what was weird about that is that's that's where I've gone to church for a long time. I grew up going to church there. My dad's an elder there, so I kind of had this like front row view of it,
Yeah.
and kind of witnessing how quickly after that people started coming out and talking about guns. Like, you know, typically when you see an event like that, you kind of digest it and you're just annoyed at all the gun chatter. But like when you know some of the people involved and you're like very close to it, it like registers with you on this visceral level of disgust that immediately before the bodies are even cold, you have people out there crowing about taking guns away. It's like, are you not concerned about the person, obviously operating the gun? This is a very cliche argument, but
Well, it's like events of terror. Usually, events of terror, you focus on the motivations of the terrorists.
yeah,
The
exactly.
United States has an uncanny ability in specific events of terror to focus on the tools.
Yeah. It's Louis C.K. has done this like comeback tour, and he had this funny bit I saw the other day. It's not really that funny.
Nope.
He's not as funny as he used to be. I'll say that.
Okay.
But he talks about the main criteria for, judging how long someone goes to jail for murder is what their like mindset when they committed the murder. Was it a crime of passion? Was it like a mechanical, which so the judicial system's still concerned with motive and like what motivated them to do that. But like the court of public opinion makes no room for that at all.
Politics makes no room for that.
Yeah.
For specific things.
Yes. Yeah.
If you want to talk about, I don't even want to talk. I mean, I don't specifically want to talk about, but if you want to talk about what's happening overseas, then it goes back to the terror limit, right?
Yeah.
Not the tool.
Right. Yes. Correct. It's like who's more just
the tools. They don't care about the tools. Like humanity. What is it? Human rights. When it happens, they're here. It becomes like a tool. Human rights issue. Over there, it's just like, well, defense got a defense.
And like as soon as that happened, Israel like loosened gun carry laws in the country in response to it.
Sure.
I don't know. I thought that was kind of interesting. Take that, gun snatchers.
Yeah. Events of terror. Baudrillard's like evil. There's no longer good versus evil. It's just evil versus evil.
Yeah, kind of makes evil banal too, and it's almost like it's almost like the evil we encounter now is so unimpressively evil that it's boring. I don't know. Maybe I'm just talking about my ass.
Of terror.
Yeah, it all feels so boring.
Well,
like if Cody Wilson is evil, then for this cause, this promoting the distribution of gun blueprints, then like how are you going to be able to identify actual evil if you consider this fairly benign thing? It just overwhelms you with disgust or whatever people's negative reactions to it. It just feels like it kind of dulls your senses about what is actually evil.
Sure. Well, it goes into Toffler's idea of future shock, that we have so much information, we have so much happening on TV, internet, Twitter, all these interfaces. It's not possible for brains to actually have informed and own personalized opinions and decisions, because it's too much. You have to become hyper dependent on what other people say. So then since there's terror everywhere, there's no true terror in some ways. We don't really know what tragedy and terror is, because we're kind of always seeing it through a focal lens of something other that we can't really even understand.
The state of Tennessee, the state of Tennessee right now is like thinking about turning down federal education dollars. And to some people in this state, they're evil for doing this. There's like hysterical reactions to this. It's an interesting time we live in.
Why are they going to turn down federal money? I don't know anything about this.
Well, federal government, Department of Education hands out anywhere from Tennessee gets about $1 billion that goes to school lunch, free school lunches, helping educate disabled students,
Okay.
early English speakers, etc. It's like all these programs that are for, disabled students basically and underprivileged students. And the
Sure.
state's thinking about exploring the idea, the feasibility of taking on those programs themselves instead of accepting money from the federal government.
Got it.
Because with those grants come strings,
Sure.
and one of the main ones is Title IX, and Title IX is kind of the window you get into about gender equality, and it's like the portal to wokeness
Got it.
is how I would frame it. Um, and honestly, it would be one of the more encouraging political developments if they go through with it. And I've been trying to push pretty hard for it, just because I think the future of American politics is a slow decentralization. I don't think it's going to be like a hot civil war. And I think a lot of this stuff that these cypherpunk characters kind of capture this spirit well. But I think you'll see it on a larger institutional level. I think you'll see states slowly pull away from the federal government's getting less and less capable. And I don't know that states are any better, but if there is a chance for, political efficiency to emerge again, it would be at the state and local level and not at the federal level, because there's no chance you're going to,
For
I
sure.
mean, so
You
it's
can't.
it's an exciting development, but people like, it's dogma. We're getting way off topic here, but it's dogma to even defund public schools. Like, people think public school system is like the church of liberalism, basically. So if you do anything that talks about giving less money to public schools, you have people go into throw a fit.
Sure.
Um,
Well, because they're maybe not seeing the entire, but yeah, but also it's the same people who probably are like, we need more money. So it doesn't make
yes,
sense. It doesn't make sense. But
they have
but they also know that the schools are like decaying.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. They're like, we need more money. The reason that I think it catches on is because you have a lot of people that don't understand
Hmm.
things, and they hear it's like an easy talking point. You're taking money away from our schools. Well, schools need money to operate, and you're taking it away. So how are they going to operate? Like, that's like all it is.
But yeah, I mean, it just goes back to a family is better establishing a smaller unit is better creating what's needed for a larger unit than the reverse.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So if it builds back from small to larger, that's the way our government's supposed to work.
Yes,
So at least at the state level, there can be, I think people act voting wise and everything. There's a swifter retribution as well if something or someone is not liked.
Yeah. At the state level.
Yeah, state level. So
yes.
go.
All right. Well, great chatting with you, Jessica.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I hope you had a good time. I'm gonna close this out, and then I'll say goodbye.
Okay. Cheers.
All right, that was Jessica Solce. Like I said, Solce, like Dolce. Like I said, you can get her film at deathathletic.com. I'll put a banner up there when we are streaming this. So yeah, check out her movie. I loved it. I wrote a review on it. I'll put that in the notes on YouTube. Talk to y'all later.
It's always weird closing out those interviews that are pre-recorded. I never know how to do it, but anyway, I highly suggest you all check out Jessica's documentary. It's interesting. The past 2 times we've had documentary filmmakers who whose films have not found purchase with standard distributors. Last week we had the director of Hot Shots, which is about I suggest you go back and watch that. It's a similar conversation. Both Jessica and Gabriel are in similar situations where their films aren't playing nice with accepted narratives, and there's been a lot of demand that they kind of adjust their movies to accommodate the demands of how these events are perceived, and they both courageously declined to do that and stuck out on their own. And these are the kind of people that, I mean, there's a lot of talk about abstract talk, especially in political organizations on the right, that like to abstractly speak about the value of free speech. But Jessica and Gabriel are both actively expressing speech with their movies, and it's comforting to know that that there's people out there, still putting up the fight. And they're both great movies. So anyway, thank you all for tuning in tonight. We'll see y'all next week.